Talk and Rock Radio, where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
In the cool of the evening when everything is getting kind of groovy, I call you up and ask you if you'd like to go with me and see a movie. First you say no, you got some plans for the night, and then you stop and say, alright, love is kinda crazy with a spooky little girl like you. You always keep me guessing, I never seem to know what you are thinking. And if a fella looks at you, it's for sure your little eye will be a winking. I get confused cause I don't know where I stand, and then you smile and hold my hand. Love is kinda crazy with a spooky little girl like you. Spooky.
Welcome, everyone, to Talk and Rock Radio. My guest today has a story that totally resonated with me. Like most of my shows, it involves musicians, their stories, and inspiration. Only this story truly defines legacy in its most sincere form. From Central Illinois, welcome, Tom Garrett.
Hey, Rick, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, Tom. You know, I usually start these shows out with a question, how did you get interested in music? So this one's going to be true to form. How did you get interested in music, man?
Well, truthfully, I started out in school like most kids. I started out as a trumpet player. And school district I was in was not a wealthy one by any means. And my family had no money. And so when it was my turn to choose an instrument, I jokingly tell this story, but it's true. There were 3 instruments left in the case that belonged to the school, school instruments that you could use for free. There was a trombone, a French horn, and a trumpet. So trombone, that's big, and I'm a little guy. French horn, that's not cool. So I said, okay, I'll play the trumpet. And so I started out as a trumpet player, and trumpet got me going in music.
Okay, so what happened after that? Did you join a band or something there in town, or what'd you do?
Yeah, well, so I played in school, fifth, that was 5th grade, I think. And then junior high, 8th grade, I think me and a couple of other guys started messing around a little bit, and we were going to be rock and roll stars, and we were going to have a band, and we got a job. I hate to tell this story because it just shows how naive people are. So this guy that was a friend of Marty, the guy that was kind of going to be the boss of the band at the time. I don't know that I've ever told this story publicly. Just popped into my head. So Marty knew a guy, and this guy said that he had a job for us at the Missouri State Fair in one of the tents. Now, the Missouri State Fair is about 180 miles from St. Louis. Oh gosh, I can't even think of the name of the town. Anyway, so we load up and we drive to the Sedalia, to the Missouri State Fair in Sedalia, Missouri. And we're trying to get in the gate. And we're telling them this story. It was a lie.
Oh,
the
no.
whole thing was a lie. So here we are, 4 guys in a 64 Ford Galaxy. There's no band job. Nobody knew who this guy was. I guess, I don't know. I never understood the why or the wherefore. I think he was trying to kind of be a big shot, and maybe he thought he had something he could get done, and it fell through. But he never told us, and so we drove all the way to Sedalia, Missouri, for this non-existent job, and then we drove back, and that was the end of that band. We realized that we needed to do something else. But that got me going and got me fired up. And after that, I did get in another band with some guys that were quite a bit older. I was 15, and had another group. And those guys, the youngest guy was, I don't know, 22 or 23. But they needed a horn player, and I knew the sax player in that band. And he said, I can get you a tryout, but he said, I don't know if they'll let you in because of your age. And so we went. And they were doing, all the great stuff out of that era. So we were playing a lot of Sam and Dave and, great trumpet parts and that kind of stuff. And I tried out for the band, and I got the job. And the guy that ran the band, when it was all set over, I auditioned. Yeah, we're going to give you a shot. We'll see how it goes. He came over and he got me by the shirt, like right here. And he kind of pulled me up close. And he said, if I ever see a drink in your hand, you'll never play trumpet again. Which I took very seriously. And so, although I was in this band where everybody could drink, and nobody was big drinkers, but they could have beer,
Sure.
But, I made sure that I had a Coca-Cola because I was pretty sure this guy was serious. But that really got me going and wanting to be a band. And then from that, met a couple other guys, and they wanted to start a band, and I always wanted to be a singer, and so I started trying to figure out how I could make that happen.
Okay, and so in some of my research on you, you were in a band that lasted for something like 30 years or so, I think.
That's true.
And you all opened for quite a few famous name acts and everything. Talk about that a little bit.
So I had a band called the Specters, and it was the Specters All Gold Rock and Roll Show. And we were based here in Central Illinois. We were part of the National Street Rod Association Entertainment. So we traveled the country playing big street rod car shows. But we got the opportunity to open for the first group we ever opened for was the Letterman.
Nice.
And the funny story about that, it was right here where I live in Central Illinois. And we got the offer from the agent. We went and we set up and we were ready to go. And the Letterman arrived at that time. The configuration was Tony Vitale, original founding member, Donovan T. and Ernie Bontier. And I saw the guy that hired us talking to Tony. And he came over and he said, I got bad news for you. They don't want an opening act. I said, well, I need my check. And he said, well, but you're not playing. And I said, we're here. We're ready to go. You hired us. I want my check. So he disappeared after a couple minutes. And he came back and he said, they want you to play. You're here, ready to go. They're not going to stop you from playing. And so Tony and I started a friendship that night. And I believe that was 1987. That exists still today. Tony has been a dear friend of mine for many years, but that was the first time. And since then, after that, we opened for the Buckinghams and Gary Puckett and the Turtles, and Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders, and gosh, I can't even think who else, Mamas and Papas. So we kind of became the opening act of choice anytime our group was in our general area of the Midwest. That's
fantastic. Tell us a little bit about how you first met the lead singer for the Classics 4, Tom. We're talking about Dennis Yost, who unfortunately we've lost, but let's talk about him a little bit.
So with Dennis, I didn't really know Dennis personally. I knew of him, and it seems to me, and I've told the story, and it seems to me we met in passing like one time. So it wasn't like we were close personal friends, but going back to Tony Vitale, Dennis fell and was injured at his home in 2006, and so many people know that story. He fell down a flight of stairs at his home and was critically injured. They wanted someone to take the group temporarily while Dennis recovered and to front the group. And my name came up. They reached out to Tony Vitale. Tony knew how to get a hold of me. So Tony put the whole thing together. He got us all together in one room, and initially myself and Mrs. Yost. And I put together an audition tape. What would it sound like if you're doing these songs? And so we put together an audition tape. We sat down with Mrs. Yost. And once we met with her, and Tony was there, then it was her job to decide, is this worth taking to Dennis? And thankfully she thought so. And so we went and met with Dennis, not on that trip, a little bit later. And, at that time, Dennis was, he was struggling with his recovery. He had a traumatic brain injury. And when I first met him, when I first got to meet him in the nursing home, see him there, here he was. Here's a guy that sold millions of records, traveled around the world, and he was in this nursing home, really a rehab center. The nursing homes around, but he was in a rehab center, and in this little room, all by himself. Just a small room, all alone. And I thought, well, this isn't right. This can't be right that his story ends here. And so I met with Dennis on multiple occasions. I jokingly tell the story that my car could find its way from my house to Dennis's kind of on its own. We made a lot of trips to Cincinnati, and we talked about how it would be. The thought was that Dennis would be involved to whatever extent he could be. Was that come to a show and be in the audience, come to the show and get out on stage, come to a show and sing. We didn't know what that future looked like. And we were kind of, is it in for a penny, in for a pound, whatever that was going to be. And if that meant that Dennis was able to take his spot back, then I would either step back and still be part of the Classics 4, or I would step out completely and go back to what I'd been doing for 30 years, and which wasn't bad, to be honest with you. We were having a great time. We traveled all over the United States, but we worked a lot. In fact, there's one of the funniest stories was when it was decided that I was definitely going to take the group. Where Dennis and I were talking, and he looked at me and he said, "I just want to I want to make sure we understand each other." He kind of reached forward and he tapped me on the chest, and he said, "You work and I get paid." And I said, "Dennis, I think you understand this completely." And we formed a friendship that, he's not with us, but he's with me every day. I don't want to sound cheesy, but that's the truth. There's not a day goes by talking about the Classics 4 like we're doing right now that Dennis isn't sitting here. It just is. Without him, this whole thing isn't happening. You and I aren't talking. So I'm so thankful for that. I'm saddened that we only had the opportunity to have Dennis at one show. The first show we did was in Indiana, and Dennis came, and so I'm there. The group's on stage, and we're performing these songs, and the guy that recorded them is literally sitting right in front of me, like you are now. And there's no pressure in that. Let me tell you. And so during the intermission, I asked Dennis if he'd like to come up on stage, and without question, he said yes. And so we brought him up on stage, and and started the second half of the show with Dennis standing there. And I talked to the audience a little bit, and it was decided that we were going to do Traces of Love. Tony Vitale was there. The Letterman had a nice hit with Traces and what was there? It was a medley, Memories. And so Tony came up on stage. So here is Tony Vitale on my left and Dennis Yost on my right, and we are singing Traces. And I always tell the story this way because, there's a little kids thing where there's a song that says, one of these is not like the other, which one could it be? And it's about putting a round peg in a square hole or whatever. And so we're singing this song, and I realized that the one that was not like the other was me, because here's Dennis and Tony and me. But it was great. And, it was so great to have Dennis on stage with us. And we thought that was the first of many. And we had no idea that was the only time he'd be able to perform with us. And it just a little later in the year, that good Lord would call him home.
I'm going to ask you a question now, and it's probably a no-brainer, but your most favorite song that the group did? The one that strikes everybody, I guess, is Spooky, because, Spooky's the kind of the most recognizable lick in that. But because of having that opportunity to share that 2 minutes and 48 seconds or whatever Traces is with Dennis, that song will be forever etched in my mind till the day I die. I mean, that's a moment in time that you can't get back, you can't duplicate, and something that I'll treasure forever.
This time of the show, ladies and gentlemen, tonight and every night, I like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the original lead singer and the founding member of the Classics 4, Mr. Dennis Yost. I tell everybody, everywhere I go, that this piece of stage belongs to Dennis. He earned it. And prior to his passing, he asked me to take care of it for him. And that's what I do, God willing, every night. D.Y., we miss you. There he is, right there. Faded photographs, covered now with lines and creases, tickets torn in half, memories in bits and pieces, traces of love long ago that didn't work out right, traces of love, ribbons from her hair, souvenirs of days together, the ring she used to wear, pages from an old love letter, traces of love long ago that didn't work out right, traces of love with me tonight. I close my eyes and say a prayer that in her heart she'll find a trace of love still there somewhere. Traces of hope in the night that she'll come back to drown. These traces of tears from my eyes. Whoa, whoa, oh yeah. Traces of hope in the night that she'll come back and drown. These traces of tears from my eyes. Mr. Dennis Yost.
When you did your audition for Dennis, do you remember what song it was that you sang for that?
We actually spent some time on it, because you have to remember that at that time there was no Classics 4 group. It was Dennis, and then Dennis would have different backing musicians depending on where he was performing. I didn't feel like that would work for me, so I took my group that I had for almost 30 years, just short of 30 years, the Specters, and from that, a few of the guys came with me, and we formed what was then and is now the Classics 4. So we did Spooky, Stormy, Traces, Every Day With You, Girl. We did Sunny. The group covered Sunny, and it was a great. We did Midnight. So we did some B songs, lesser known Classics 4 songs. And so when I went to him, I had, I think 7 or 8 songs for him to listen to. I wanted it to be more than just, hey man, I can sing your hits. I wanted to spend some more time on it, and we worked very hard. And when I say we, I sing, I don't play an instrument, but the guys worked very hard to duplicate those sounds and duplicate the music so that it was right. And every night when we go out, I still go out on stage no matter where we are. And in my mind, with Dennis sitting in the front row, just like he was, watching to make sure we're doing it right. And that's just how I approach it. And it's just the way it's got to be. As a
vocalist, many people may not realize this, but especially when you're trying to do the song the way it was originally done, or even a little different way, with a little different styling or whatever, it's sometimes difficult for people to understand that you have a lot of elements when you're singing a song. You've got the tone, you've got the everything, the timing, the speed of the song, the intonation. There's so many variables, especially when you're singing with other voices, because now you've got the blend factor. You've got a lot of things that you have to do to make music sound, the way that it was originally represented, and you want to make it sound as good or better if you can, so your job to take on that position, I mean, you literally became the caretaker of Dennis Yost's position on that stage, as you've said before. And you've done a great job. You really have.
Well, thank you. And I actually, it's funny you say that, but I've actually done that. I said that exact word on stage. I've told people that this place where I stand on the stage belongs to Dennis Yost. It's my job to take care of it. And that's how I look at it. I'm not trying to be Dennis. I'm not trying to be better than Dennis. I don't ever want to be worse, because then that's not fair. But I just want to be something that if he were still here, he'd be proud of. And I believe that we've accomplished that. I'm fortunate that I've got guys that have been with me. Our bass player, Kevin. Kevin was with me. We've been 35 years together. And when I approached him and a couple of the other guys about doing this project, he didn't even blink. He said, "Okay." Then we started rehearsing, and we rehearsed for a year with no jobs. We were still working as the Specters, but we had no jobs with the Classics 4. And that's a lot of work, as you well know, trying to put together a show, then rehearse that show and make sure that it's ready to go for the time when you need it. And at the same time, praying that you're going to need it, praying that the opportunity, because we didn't know, maybe nobody would hire it. Nobody would book it. And, but we persevered, and I'm proud to say that this year we'll join the Happy Together tour again for our 4th consecutive appearance on the tour. Our 3rd time as a full-time. This last year I jokingly tell people that last year we were either Gary Puckett or the Buckinghams. I had an identity crisis because we were filling in either for Gary or for the Bucks. But this year we're back for the full tour, and that's a testament to the music, and it's something that I know Dennis would love to have been part of.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And that tour involves some really great bands that all were part of the golden era of rock and roll. You got the Cowsills on there with you. You've got Little Anthony. You got some great ones on there, man. In fact, by the time you go on that tour, I will have interviewed everybody in that show except for Little Anthony, and maybe we'll even squeeze him in. But you got some real fun ones on there, man.
And it's going to be great. I was on the phone with Gary Puckett just a little while ago. But it's one of those things that pride is maybe not the right word. I'm trying to think of a better word, but I have great pride in what we've been able to accomplish, and I take pride in knowing that if Dennis was still with us, that he would be happy with what we're doing. And Dennis was one guy. In 2019, we were on the tour, and the tour was going to be in Jacksonville, Florida, on June 2nd. The band started in Jacksonville, and Wally Eaton, one of the other original founding members, still lives in Jacksonville today. And the city of Jacksonville, because the group was coming there with the tour, proclaimed June 2nd to be Classics 4 Day in Jacksonville, Florida. And they wanted to present Wally a proclamation stating that fact on stage. And so I talked to the tour manager, and I said, can we make this happen? And he said, sure, we can do it. How long do you need? And I said, well, just a couple minutes, but yes. And so Wally came, we met, we talked, I think it was the former mayor and the chief of the city councilors. Yeah, but that's what it was. Former mayor and chief of the city council came out, talked for a minute about the group starting in Jacksonville, et cetera, et cetera. They introduced Wally. Wally came out, and they had this nice proclamation. And so I stepped back a little bit because that's his, I wasn't there in 65 rather. And Wally kind of motioned for me, and I said, no, this is yours. And he said, it's yours now too.
Wow.
Now that's a guy that started the thing. I'm eternally grateful for that acceptance and the audience. Looking at the audience as I'm looking at you, to everyone that watches this and listens to this, if you have come to see the Classics 4 since I've taken over, thank you for the support and the kindness that I've received. And I'm so appreciative. And I think I said this to you earlier. I'm truly so blessed. I just don't have any other word for it.
I think humbled is the operative word here. I think also, Tom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was a time when, in those early days in a band that went to a job that didn't exist, that I never thought I'd meet Gary Puckett or Mark Volman and Howard Kalin from the Turtles. That I'd ever meet those people, let alone call them friends, see them on a daily basis. That was so far beyond my imagination as a kid growing up in the inner city in St. Louis, that to sit here today is crazy. It's just a crazy reality.
And those two names that you just named off are two of the nicest guys I've ever gotten to know. They are, I tell you, man, Gary Puckett, he's the real deal. I mean, the other day I talked to him and he was over in Australia doing a show over there. And in fact, they had I think 3 or 4 more to do before he was coming back. But it was just like he was across the street, on his phone talking to me. It was just great. He's an amazing guy. And all of those, the Cowsills, every one of them that I have dealt with, Carl Giammarisi, Jules Alexander. I mean, these guys, they have nothing to prove anymore. They've all done it. They're all great, really nice, very still good at what they do, and they have great stories to tell. And that's why we're doing this show today with you, because you're keeping the legacy going, man. And this is what rings so true to me with doing a show like this, is that I want people to understand that it's not just about playing music, but there are backstories to all of this. There are reasons for why things happen the way they do in Destiny. It really reverberates very heavily with me. There's
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's another story that I really want you to share, and that's about the couple that you had met prior to the show starting.
So now you want to make me cry. Thank you.
Well, no, you don't have to cry, but if it happens, hey, so be it.
So we were doing a show in Ohio, and people with disabilities, in this case a wheelchair, they let them in a little early, get their seat, get their spot. And this gentleman came up to the stage and he got my attention, and he said, "You're with the Classics 4, right?" And I said, "I am, sir." And he told me that him and his wife were there to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, and that Traces of Love was their song. And I said, "Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for being here. Is today your anniversary?" And he goes, No, it's not till, I think it was October. That's 5 months away. And I said, "Oh," and he said, "But my wife won't be with us anymore." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And he goes, "Well, basically, it is what it is. We understand." And I said, "Absolutely." So I always like to go out in the audience. That's something I learned from Tony Butell, to be honest with you, watching Tony work an audience. And I like to go out and so the song before Traces, I went out in the audience and was kind of saying hi to people. And I worked my way around to where this couple was. And we did Traces. And while I was singing, I watched them. They were holding hands. Both of them had their eyes closed. And for that short period of time, it was 1969 for them. And it was all I could do to finish the song. In fact, I knew this was going to happen because the story, this picture in my mind, this video in my mind, just it just touches my heart, and that's corny, but it's the truth. And if you talk about a gift, the gift of music and what it means to people is often forgotten in the fun of doing a rock and roll show, or the fun of being at a party and the songs are playing in the background and all those things. But music, especially the music of this era, and pardon me, will that be true of the music of today? I don't know, but the music of our era touches people. It puts a smile on their face. It takes them to a happier time. One of the things that Dennis used to comment about was guys that were in Vietnam that would talk to him about Spooky. Spooky was playing in Vietnam and how much that song meant to him. I've had guys tell me that. So for there again, that little short song, I don't think anything was 3 minutes back then. It was all had to be under 3 minutes. So here's a guy, in the middle of nowhere in Candymen or one of those places. And here's a song that just makes him smile for a minute.
That song, Spooky, so many different people did that song. Atlanta Rhythm Section did a really nice version of it. In fact, Andy Anderson, who took over the lead position, kind of like what you did, singing-wise, with the Atlanta Rhythm Section, he came in and did my rock and roll show that I did for 8 years in El Paso. Back in 2016, he came in and he had a tribute band, Atlanta Rhythm Section, called Champagne Jam, and incredible musicians, and it sounded like Atlanta Rhythm Section up there playing, but they did Spooky and brought the house down. Sanborn did a beautiful sax version of that. I was talking to a guy earlier on text today, a friend of mine, Frank Zona, and he was even talking about Spooky is in his book still today when he plays. It's part of his catalog, and he does the Sanborn version of that. And but what you're saying is so true, Tom, because music, especially music of the 60s and 70s, I don't care, man. I grew up with that. I was in bands that played that music, and that's why I'm doing so many of these shows right now with the entertainers that were part of those groups that made that music. And that it was some of the finest that there ever was that's ever been produced, because it never grows old. We still want to hear these songs. It's so good.
Well, we'll go out on the Happy Together tour starting the end of May. I believe there's 59 shows over the summer, all across the country. And it sells out. So the audience for this music is huge. And one of the best things is to see people in the audience that weren't born when we were playing it. But they got onto it because of their parents, or in some cases, their grandparents. They heard it, and they're like, man, that's kind of cool. And so they come to the show. And that's great. That's an awesome thing. But music is therapy, I guess. It really is. They call it the gift of music, and it is. It's a gift to perform it. It's a gift to enjoy it. It's a gift to have it transport you to a happier time, sometimes a sadder time, but something that you want to reflect on. Not every song takes you to a happy place. Sometimes they take you to a sad place. But those memories are important as well.
It's a blessing to have that in our lives. You know, there's a song that my mom absolutely loved, and it was the song "I Believe." Mm-hmm. Tennessee Ernie Ford did that, and I never got tired of hearing that song. In fact, it became one of my most favored songs out of everything. When I heard the Letterman's version of "I Believe," it has become one of my all-time classic favorites. Never get tired of it. A friend of mine, and I'll mention his name briefly. His name is Don Clough. We were playing at the Sahara in Lake Tahoe in 1974 on the same billing with Elvis Presley and Diana Ross, Fifth Dimension, Isaac Hayes, the guy, I'm trying to remember all the groups, but across the street there was a group called Command Performance, and the guy that was fronting the group, his name was Don Clough. And long story short, we have remained fast friends all those years from 74. I mean, we talk to each other still like once a week, you know. He lives in Las Vegas, and just a dear friend, great singer, great musician. He did a song called "The Working Man's Prayer," and it was very popular in Las Vegas around Thanksgiving time. And Bobby Goldsboro had a label called the Viking label, and he recorded Don doing "The Working Man's Prayer," and it's a medley. It ends with "I Believe." And I tell you, every time I hear this song, I get goosebumps. You know, it's so well done. And of course, Bobby Goldsboro, he produced it very well for Don. And it's just something I wanted to throw out there, because it's like you said, music doesn't always make you happy. It can make you sad. It can make you melancholy. It can bring, positive feelings to you. But the main thing here is that it stirs up emotion, in our
Absolutely.
lives, in our memories and everything. And I think that's why music is, it's a universal language. It's something that, I've seen shows where you guys and other groups are performing for foreign audiences, They don't even speak English, but they know the music.
Absolutely.
That just shows right there how powerful music is, in any language. It can't be duplicated. It can't be replicated. It can't be, anything but what it is. And it's so powerful. It's really incredible.
Here's a great story. We had a chance in 2014 to go to the Philippines. And so we went over there with John Claude Gramont, is the lead singer of the Cascades, Rhythm of the Rain. And so in the United States, Rhythm of the Rain was a giant hit. We went over to the Philippines. We were in Manila, and so we did our bit, and John got up, and the album Rhythm of the Rain, every song on that album, the entire album, I believe there were 10 cuts, was a #1 record in the Philippines.
Wow.
He had 10 hit records on one album in the Philippines. It was amazing, and but that audience over there, we took off into our part of the show. They were singing along. They knew the music. They were smiling. They were clapping. They were having a great time. And it was a wonderful experience. The flight to the Philippines, not so much, but
that's a 16-hour time difference over there.
Yeah. It was a little crazy, but it was so much fun. Danny Samonte, the promoter, brought us over there, and we had so much fun. It was such a great experience to get a chance to do that. But when we talk about, like, how do I put this? Things that happen along your journey that can turn things around. You and I talked earlier. As I'm experiencing this growth with the Classics 4 and things are starting to really get better and go well, I get diagnosed with cancer. And so, gee, what happens now? And not just cancer, but throat cancer. And so this whole journey that's grown leaps and bounds since then, from 2016, with the tour and all that stuff, could have ended then. So, there's all these roadblocks that come about, and it just seems like the music finds a way around it.
Well, and I'm glad that all worked out for you with your throat cancer, man. And you and I shared similar stories about that. I had a parathyroid surgery that I had done, and of course, in your situation, you use the photon method of curing you, which is non-invasive, and I'm glad that all worked out for you, man. And, God had a hand in that.
It was crazy, proton therapy is non-invasive, and the amazing thing about it, the worst pain that I suffered, as far as pain. Now, discomfort, that's a whole different thing. But pain was when they did the biopsy on my neck. My treatments were completely pain-free. It was an amazing thing, and I never lost my voice. But surgery, I could have lost my voice. I could have lost my ability to swallow. A lot of things could have happened. And so I tell everybody, the main thing, the most important thing I tell everybody is get a second opinion. Don't just assume that there's only one road that you can travel. And proton wouldn't be right for everybody. It was right for me. But it was an amazing thing. I did 33 proton radiation treatments. And 6 weeks, 3 days after that last treatment, we were in Las Vegas at the Cannery, and we had 3,000 people in the audience, and I was able to perform 6 weeks later. Was I as strong as I would have liked to have been? No. Was I as heavy as I wanted to be? No. I lost a lot of weight during the treatment, during the thing, but. There again, somewhere a hand stepped in and said, go this direction. And so there we are. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, man. I'm glad that all worked out well for you and everything. Well, my friend, you've got a big tour coming up, 59 days of lots of fun,
Yeah.
I have a request for you.
Okay.
When you see Susan, Bob, and Paul Cowsill and Gary Puckett, give them a big hug from me.
Okay. I will tell them. I will do that. It's okay. I'll hug Susan. Paul, Gary, Bob, hey, this guy said hi. No, I just teasing. Absolutely. And Bob, Paul, and Susan there, they're great people. In 19, we shared the bus. I was on the same tour bus with them.
Oh, man.
And the other guy on the tour bus was Chuck Negron.
I know. I heard the stories.
Oh my gosh, I never laughed so hard in my life.
I'm still trying to do a show with him, but he's got his own show. And Amy, I think that's his wife's name, right, Amy?
Amy, yeah.
Yeah. She, I've even visited with her, and she said, well, Chuck has got his own thing going. And I said, I know, but have him make some room for me. He's the Three Dog Night's always been one of my most favorite groups to play. We did a lot of their music in some of my bands, and he's right up there with the Vanilla Fudge and the Rascals. And I got the Rascals coming up. I'm going to be doing one with I'm doing one with Felix in the next few days. So
That's awesome.
and
That's
maybe
awesome.
Maybe Gene Cornish will be joining us too. I don't know. I'm still talking to their management right now to secure my date next week or so. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I saw where Gene's coming back. I don't know for a lot of shows or for a few shows at least.
oh, good, yeah, excellent. And there's a bunch of them out there that are like part of that era and everything, and they're still doing their thing like you are, and it's so exciting, to see the music, hear the music, and keeping the legacy alive. And once again, Tom, you are to be commended for what you're doing in keeping Dennis Yost memories of what he used to do and what he accomplished and keeping it alive, my friend.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor, I guess is the best. That is the best word. I've been honored to have been asked to do it, honored to have been allowed to do it for all these years now, 15 years that I've been since we first signed a contract to do this, and I know that I've reached a point that I know that Dennis would be happy with what we're doing, and that I made him a promise sitting in that little room I talked about when we were talking about this. I said, I promise you I'll never do anything to embarrass you or the name of this group. And I have diligently tried to make sure that never happens. We always are professional, that we always sound good. I've told everybody, said this so many times, when the time comes that I can't sing, I want to be the first guy to know that I'm done. I don't want to be the second guy.
There you go. There you
Be the
go.
first guy that says, you know what, I think it's time to step away.
And you'll know when it's that time. But in the meanwhile, my friend, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing it with grace and style and sincerity and fantastic inspiration. Thank you, Tom Garrett, for being with me today. And
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it.
let's stay in touch, my friend. And you have a great Happy Together tour, and stay happy.
Well, if you get a chance, come out and see us. We're going to be everywhere.
If you'd get in our neck of the woods, man, you're all over the place, but you don't, for some reason, don't like to come down to Texas way. We need to see you over here.
Yeah, I'd love to come to Texas. I have friends in Texas, and you're still in El Paso, are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I have some friends live up around live in Arlington, actually. Yeah, I love Texas, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like they ever get down that way. But it's like everything else. It takes somebody that takes in this business a promoter. You need a promoter that says, I could bring that show here. I'm pretty sure that if there was a promoter in Texas that would make it work for them, they'd look at doing that. But I am not management. I am labor, and I'm happy to not be involved in any of that part of it. I'm just happy to do my part and just be part of this amazing experience. Because truly, although we're coining a phrase, when we do this tour in the summer, we truly are all happy together.
No doubt about that. Thank you for being with us, Tom, and we'll talk to you real soon, buddy.
All the best. Thanks, everybody.
Stay safe.
Always.
Bye-bye.
Bye.